Hello everybody, my name's Stephanie. I am so glad you're joining me here today. We're going to be looking at the Sun Salutation today. If you've been on my website, there is a little bit more in-depth description of what all of this is, but we're going to be looking at it today, looking at what engagement of the muscles you should be feeling. It's going to be different in everybody's body type. I get asked a lot of times, what poses do I need to learn when I'm first starting out yoga? And that's kind of a very varied question. Many people, when they're coming to the Vinyasa style, they're going to be looking at the Sun Salutation because that's the heart. That's what it's being built around. If you're looking at different styles of yoga, that's going to be answered very differently. But we're going to look at the Sun Salutation today. So join me on your mat, wherever you're at, and let's get started. We're going to begin with the breath. So you're coming to any kind of comfortable seated position. And you may have blocks, you may not, and that's not really important. I'm just going to use them just to show you some different options. But we're just beginning to breathe. So take a moment, just close your eyes. You can just listen to me. And we're just going to take a moment. Deep inhales and exhales through the nose. We just want to take a few moments to connect our minds with our bodies. Maybe the first time that you're looking through your body, just to check in to see how you're feeling. So beginning at the top of your head, looking down through the neck, through the shoulders, through the upper back, middle back, lower back, down into the hips and the glutes, looking down through the legs to the hamstrings, the thighs, the kneecaps, shins and calves, ankles and toes, back up through the body to the arms, elbows, wrists, fingers. If you're finding anything there, just being gentle with your thoughts instead of, oh, that's my bad knee that's always acting up, or my hip is bad today. Just being kind and realizing it just wants a little bit more attention, maybe a little bit more breath. So always being conscious that you have the option to come to different modifications. We're just going to begin to warm up the body a little bit. So making your way to tabletop. Aligning your wrists underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. Spread all of your fingers nice and wide, and almost kind of like you're rock climbing. You're gripping your mat with all 5 finger pads. And then notice the 4 corners of your palms. We're going to take a little bit of movement here, just kind of rocking back and forth. And see if you can keep the engagement down through all 4 corners. The natural tendency is going to be to want to rock back and lift those top 2 corners. But see if you can keep them down. It's almost like your palm is a suction cup. And you want to keep it glued down, even though that center part is pulling up a little bit. And then once you can find that engagement through all 4 corners, come back to your neutral tabletop. Pull your core in. So you're not reaching your spine up towards the ceiling, but you're just finding a little bit of engagement. And then keeping that engagement, see if you can rock back and forth. All 4 corners of your palms, core engaged. So arms are working, core is working. We're just checking all these things out in our body. And then coming back to a neutral tabletop. Let's find some movement here. Inhale, drop your core, lift your hips, lift the crown of your head, back bend. Inhale to cow. Exhale, reach your spine up towards the ceiling. Pull your belly button in, chin to chest. Press away from your mat, cat. We're going to take a couple of these here together. Inhaling to cow. Exhaling to cat. And just noticing what you're feeling in your low back, what you're feeling maybe in the glutes or the hips, shoulders, wrists. Each little step, we're just taking a little bit more movement to see where we're at for today. And then as soon as you're finished up, make your way back to your neutral spine. Re-engage arms, all four corners, core pulls in, roll your shoulders back. So the inside of the elbows aren't turned in towards each other, they're turned towards the front of the mat. You're almost wrapping everything back. Keep all of this engagement, tuck your toes, take it real slowly, beginning to lift your hips up and back. You're finding your first down dog here. Find some movement here, maybe pedal your heels. It's called walking the dog. Maybe you're wagging your hips side to side. You can rock back and forth on your wrists, or maybe you're lowering and lifting your knees. Really taking note. If this is the first time you've done this, you're going to begin to feel this very heavy in your wrists. See if you can keep those top two corners down. And then begin to settle in to your down dog. Soften your knees just a little bit. Reach your hips up and back. It's almost like someone's coming behind you and pulling your hips up and back. If you're feeling anything in your low back, you can soften your knees. Keep engagement through your arms. Ears in line with your shoulders, so you're not pushing them back past your shoulders. Keep your shoulders rolled back. There's a lot going on here. Belly button still pulling in. So you've got this upside down V shape, stretching out the back side of your body and the front back side of your body. Take a deep, deep bend in your knees. Look up between your hands. Take your time. We're just warming up, beginning to walk your feet to the top of your mat. Standing forward fold. Now, everybody's standing forward fold is different. I have super, super long arms. So I don't have quite as far to go to the floor. But those with shorter arms, or maybe you have long, long legs with short arms, you've got to go so much further. Or it may just be that your hips are super tight. Low back's tight. So you want to make a modification to make it your standing forward fold. Everybody's going to look a little different. So you can soften your knees if you're feeling anything. You can widen your stance. You can take, or if you have books at home, you can place them underneath your palms. There's 3 different levels to your blocks. And all this is, instead of thinking of blocks as a weakness or a crutch, think of it as more length for your arms. So everybody's going to be a little bit different. No matter what you're doing, wherever your hands are, reach your crown down. Pull your core in. So a lot of times in standing forward fold, you're going to see people arching through the back. So this is not lifting the spine forward and up like in cat. It's nice and long, reaching your crown down. So your gaze is back between your knees. From here, inhale, halfway lift. Hands are going to slide up the legs. Take your gaze out in front of you. Roll your shoulders back. So shoulders are away from the ears. They're not all the way up here. Core is still pulled in, reaching your heart forward. Again, can you notice, are you rounding your spine or can you flatten your back out? Soften your knees if you need to. It's okay. Exhale, reach back down through your crown. Pull your belly button into spine. Inhale, reverse swan dive all the way up. And exhale, hands down through heart center. So we've warmed up just a little bit. So this is kind of the very beginning of the sun salutation. We're coming into mountain pose. So mountain pose, a lot of people are like, oh yes, I'm just standing here. That's not that hard. Instead of thinking, oh, it's hard or easy, thinking, am I engaging the right muscles? So for example, for me, I know that I have a tendency to stick my butt out. I'm tipping my pelvis forward. I like to call this duck butt sometimes. Some people might have the tendency to pull it way far in, so they're tipping their pelvis back. Think of it like a cup. You're tipping either forward or back. You want to have a nice neutral pelvis, where instead of thinking it's going front or back, think of shooting the hips down. You're lengthening torso, pulling the core in. If you have super hypermobile joints, think of, instead of locking the knees out, can you soften a little bit? We want to find this alignment. So we're coming at the very beginning to Tadasana, mountain pose, reaching down through the hips, reaching down through the heels, reaching up through the crown. So even when I reach my arms up overhead, I'm reaching up through the crown and not through my shoulders and my arms. So let's come to the front of our mats, finding that neutral pelvis. Core is engaging, pulling belly button to spine. Reach your arms up overhead. Can you keep your shoulders down and back? They're not coming up by your ears. Keep your belly button pulled in. Exhale, swan dive. Soften your knees on the way down if you need to. Make any modifications you need to. Maybe the hands don't go all the way down. That's okay. Inhale, halfway lift. Stretching, stretching, reaching the crown forward, tailbone back, shoulders back, core engaged. Exhale, reach back down through your crown. So you're driving that energy down through your crown, up through your hips. Deep bend in your knees. Plant both of your hands. Step one foot way back to the back of your mat. Other foot steps back. Top of your plank, shoulders over your wrists. We're going to take a few different options to move through this sun salutation. I like to do this as a warm-up at the beginning of class, just to kind of check out to see where my body is at for this day. So on your next exhale, take your knees down to the mat. Knees are going to come back way behind the hips. A lot of times, I'll see people and they bring them underneath their hips. This is tabletop. So we're not coming to tabletop, we're coming to plank. You're creating a nice long line of energy from the crown of your head down through your hips to your knees. Press down into the mat. Can you feel between the shoulder blades, the scapula kind of pressing apart? So you don't want to dump everything down. You're going to feel everything kind of lift up. Are all four corners still down? Did they pop up? That's okay if they did. We're just checking in, seeing where we're at. First option from here, plank on your knees. Bend your elbows. Elbows are going to point back towards your toes. Lower yourself down in one piece. Keep gripping your mat. Elbows, shoulders back. Inhale, drag forward, lengthen your spine. Belly button pulls in, lift up, little baby cobra. So low back and core are working together. It's not just one. Exhale, melt back down. Inhale, press up. Through tabletop, curl your toes, hips up and back, down dog. You can take some movement, wiggles here again. Then re-engaging. Deep bend in your knees, look up between your hands, take your time again. Walk your feet to the top of your mat. Breathe out, reach down through your crown. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, reach back down. Belly button to spine. Inhale, reverse swan dive. And exhale, hands down through heart center. So that's kind of the first option of our sun salutation. We're going to look at two other options if you're choosing to flow. It's always a choice. So this is the hardest thing. I can say, at least for me it is. Sorry, I just touched my mic. For me it is learning that I don't always have to force my body to go to what I think in my mind is the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing for me sometimes is making the more, I don't want to say more easy, whatever, the easier choice in my body for today. So I may say, okay, I cannot do that or should not do that. I'm going to take a different option. So second option, we're coming back to Tadasana, mountain pose. Core engages, lengthen through the spine. Inhale, lengthen, arms reach up overhead. Exhale, swan dive. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, reach back down. Deep bend in your knees. Plant your hands. Step your feet back again, top of your plank. Shoulders over your wrist. Bend your knees, take them to the mat again. Are your knees back behind your hips? Are your arms still engaged? You're making that little mountaintop between your scapula.
Bend your elbows. Exhale. You can lower all the way to your belly again, or maybe you're pausing this time. Chaturanga, halfway down. Elbows are going to be in line with your shoulders, or maybe your shoulders are a little above, but your shoulders aren't below. Then release all the way down. Keep gripping your mat. Inhale, drag forward. Lift back up. Core pulls in, baby cobra. Maybe you press into your palms, middle cobra or high cobra. Whatever your back bend is, can you keep length in your back bend? It's dragging forward and up. If your feet want to float up, press the tops of your feet into the mat. Exhale, melt back down. Inhale, press up, tabletop. Curl your toes, hips up and back to your down dog.
Take some movement wiggles here again if you need. Deep bend in your knees, look between your hands. This time, step, hop, or float your feet to the top of your mat. A lot of people ask me, what does that mean? Step, hop, or float? I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Exhale, melt down. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, reach back down. Inhale, belly button to spine, reverse swan dive.
And exhale, hands down through heart center. Okay, let's come back to that idea of step, hop, or float your feet. That has to do with a little bit more core strength with each one and arm strength. I'm not quite to the point where I can flip my feet, but I've seen it. It's beautiful. But if that is never part of your practice, don't think that that's a weakness or a failure. You can just walk your feet up every single time. You're protecting your body. You're not wanting to break it. So when you're stepping, you're just walking it up. You can hop like I did there.
Or floating is a little bit more engagement where you're pressing into the mat and the feet are floating up and then coming back down. So it's almost like looks like you're going to go into a handstand
and you're floating back down. So we're going to look at the third option.
So that second option was very similar to the first. You're just pausing in that chaturanga. You're holding there. You're creating some arm strength there. It's up to you how long you're holding it. Or if you're really wanting to add a little bit more movement, you can add push-ups. You can keep elbows back and do chaturanga push-ups. You can have them come out to the side and do a little bit more traditional push-up. I tend to like the chaturanga ones because that's the strength I'm building here. So we're coming back to the top of our mats. Third option here. Core pulls in. Can you find your neutral pelvis? Maybe play around with it for a moment. That's okay. Inhale, arms reach up overhead. Exhale, swan dive. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, reach back down. Deep bend in your knees, plant your hands, step your feet back. You can go back to your knees again, take one of those first two options, or you can stay on your toes this time, shift just a little bit further forward towards your toes. So all this is plank on your toes. Instead of thinking this is plank and this is not plank, think this is plank, this is also plank. This is plank on the knees, plank on the toes. Long line of energy. This time it's going from the crown of the head all the way back through my heels.
Bend your elbows. You can pause halfway down chaturanga. You can add your push-ups. You can go to your belly or flip to the tops of your feet. Press into your palms, tops of your feet, up dog.
Press back, tabletop. Curl your toes, hips up and back, down dog. Deep bend in your knees, look between your hands, step, hop, or float your feet to the top of your mat. Breathe out, reach down. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, reach back down. Belly button to spine, inhale, reverse swan dive.
And exhale, hands down through heart center. So that's essentially the Sun Salutation flow. And as you've seen, there's 3 different options for that. What you're looking for is to see if your body is wanting that movement or if you're just wanting to skip it all together. As we kind of work and grow a little bit more together, you'll hear me say, move through your flow, go straight to down dog, or go to child's pose. This one is fabulous. So if you're feeling any kind of pain in your low back, maybe the shoulders are beginning to really talk a little bit, or the wrists are getting a little talkative, you're gonna come to child's pose. Toes touching, knees are way apart. Reach your tailbone back towards your heels. Palms can reach either out in front of you, or you can reach them behind you. You're grounding down, forehead to mat. Or if this is even a little bit too much, you can take a block. You can turn it all the way up. You can ground down, forehead to block. What this is essentially doing is stretching out your hip flexors, stretching out the low back. So you're still thinking of length. We're not rounding through. We're still lengthening. So if you want to from here, you can spider walk your fingers even further forward. So this is a great place to come. This is also a great place to come if you're ever feeling very anxious,
or everything out here in the world is getting a little bit too much. Just ground yourself down for a moment. Just come here, just breathe. A lot of times when you're coming into yoga, you think, oh, I've got to do every single thing that's being cued or what everybody else is doing. You could come in the room for the entire class and just ground down in child's pose. You're technically still doing yoga. If you're flowing, however, you're taking one of those three options. One thing to really keep in mind is from your plank, whether it's on your knees or it's on your toes, we're lowering down in one solid piece all the way down, even if you're pausing halfway down.
So it's not a nosedive. A lot of times you hear people say, smell the roses. You don't want to nosedive. That's going to put a little bit too much strain on certain body parts. So we're lowering down in one piece, so nothing's hitting first. It's a lot of arm engagement. It's a lot of core engagement. And then remember, find your length before your back bend. High cobra, up dog, maybe just nothing at all, just lengthen. So I hope that helps you answer some of the questions for Sun Salutation. If you have anything else, I'd love your comments. I'd love to talk about this with you. You can jump on over to my website also, where this week we discuss full expression of the pose. A lot of times you'll hear people say, to come into the full expression of the pose, do this. So we're going to discuss that over on my website. So it is yogistephaniew.com. If you enjoyed my video today, I would love it if you would subscribe and be a part of this. Before we end our time together, we're going to take just a few more moments just to come back into our bodies, just to breathe. So let's just take a few more moments. You can come to any kind of comfortable seated position, or maybe you just want to come to your back. You can lay on your back in corpse pose with your legs extended,
arms extended, laying down. But we're just going to take a few more moments here just to breathe. So on your inhale, feeling the whole body expand. And exhale. Inhale through the nose. And this time, let's exhale through the mouth. Let everything go. One more time. Inhale through the nose. Exhale. Let it go through the mouth. And then come back to your natural breath. Thank you so much for being a part of this today. Be grateful to yourselves for the things you were able to do today. Even if you were just playing around with things and you felt like you made a mistake. Mistakes aren't failures.
Be grateful to yourself for the things you can't do, because in that we're learning to listen to ourselves, to listen to our bodies. Saying no is always an option. It's not a weakness, it's a sign of strength to be able to do that. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of your practice. Blessings and namaste.